Patricia Gibson.
I'm delighted to contribute in this debate, although, like probably everybody in the chamber, I really wish it wasn't necessary. I'm delighted that my honourable friend, the Honourable Member for Dundee West, has brought this debate forward. It's been very, very timely, of course, as we've heard, given international events and the Save the Children report, which was published in February 2018, called The War on Children. We've heard throughout the chamber today, the sad fact is that children pay the heaviest price for war, but they, of course, bear the very least responsibility, no responsibility for it. They may survive conflict, but their innocence is murdered. War robs them of their sense of themselves, their homes, and too often their parents. It is an indictment of mankind as a species that the number of children living in conflict zones has increased by more than 75% from the early 1990s, when it was around 200 million, and now it's more than 357 million children, around 1 in 6 of the world's children population. 165 million of these children are engulfed in high-intensity conflicts, where there is often no access to schools or health facilities, and they are much more exposed to violence. The Middle East is where children are most likely to live in a conflict zone. In 2016, about 2 in 5 children in this region were living within 50 kilometres of a conflict event in their own country. Africa is second in this grotesque league table, where 1 in 5 children are affected by conflict. This means that children are more at risk in conflict now than at any other time in the last 20 years. And research shows the trends are very clear. There has been an escalation in the number of UN-verified cases of killing and maiming of children, with an increase of nearly 300% since 2010. The number of incidents of denial of humanitarian access has also risen 15-fold in the same period. And there has been a growing trend of abductions, because war opens the door. War opens the door to and invites in such chaos where licence thrives. We also have to accept the fact that increasingly brutal tactics are used, using children as mere weapons of war, as suicide bombers, the targeting of or launching of weapons from schools and hospitals. In this chamber, we are extremely lucky that we can only speculate, but we can't even really begin to imagine what effect living in such conditions has on children. A culture of violence can often breed a culture of violence in the next generation, and peaceful societies become harder to build and rebuild as a result. What we need is real and concrete international action to ensure that children's lives and safety are protected. Save the Children has called on the United Kingdom government to use all the influence at its disposal to improve measures that protect children and ensure there is a greater focus on explosive weapons in populated areas, and to bring in measures to address the challenges surrounding this, including the training and support provided to the forces of other states, establishing a cross-government framework to track civilian harm and ensure comprehensive recording of civilian casualties, and consistently championing independent accountability mechanisms at the UN and other forums. And that includes investigations into the potential grave violation of children's rights. The UK government should seek to show leadership in delivering humanitarian assistance, working with allies to prevent the long-term damage of armed conflict. Responding to the psychosocial challenges of childhood trauma and conflict and toxic stress is extremely important, and there is an opportunity here, and there ought to be the political will, to drive forward global action and investment in children's mental and psychosocial health, thus helping to reverse the long-term damage that will be done to a generation of children. And the point made earlier by the Honourable Member for Coventry about the UK government's absolute duty to fulfil in full the terms of the Dubs Agreement was well made. The UK's Safe Schools Declaration is of course to be welcomed, and as the lead in the global partnership to end violence against children, the UK must use and prioritise aid to protect and champion children, to protect them against violence and recruitment into the worst forms of child labour. Children do not create wars. They, more than any other group, are victims of it. The UK government and the international community must take note and act. It is time to do all that can be done to end this murdering of innocence.